in British supermarket fridges right now is not what the packaging implies it is. That is not a dramatic overstatement. It is a straightforward description of how the cream cheese category has developed over the past few decades, and understanding it requires nothing more than reading the ingredient list on the back of the tub you have probably been buying on autopilot for years. The original process for making cream cheese is genuinely simple. You take milk and cream, you introduce lactic acid bacterial cultures. Those cultures ferment the mixture, acidify it, and over time the proteins tightened and the fat coalesces into a dense, naturally stable structure. The chemistry does the work. The result needs no additional ingredients to hold its shape, spread smoothly, or taste like cream cheese, because it is cream cheese. 4 ingredients: milk, cream, cultures, salt. The economics of that process are the reason the category looks the way it does today. Cream is one of the most expensive components in food manufacturing. Water is essentially free, and food scientists working for large dairy manufacturers discovered decades ago that if you add certain ingredients called hydrocolloids to water, you can make that water behave like cream. You can give it viscosity, a rich mouthfeel, a dense appearance, and a smooth, spreadable texture. The hydrocolloid system holds the water molecules together in a way that mimics what fat does naturally. The result looks like cream cheese, spreads like cream cheese, and to many consumers tastes close enough to cream cheese that the substitution goes unnoticed. The financial logic is straightforward. Replace expensive cream with cheap water, use hydrocolloids to simulate the texture, reduce your cost per unit significantly, and maintain the pricing and packaging of a premium dairy product. Margins improve, the formula is scalable, and crucially, it is entirely legal. That legality rests on a specific labeling distinction worth understanding before we look at the brands. Traditional cream cheese must meet a regulatory standard that requires minimum fat content and maximum moisture. Products meeting that standard can be called cream cheese, but a product labeled cream cheese spread operates under different, more flexible rules. Higher moisture content is permitted, more stabilizers are allowed, the fat threshold changes. And because the word spread is typically printed in small text alongside the main brand name, in a font, most shoppers do not register from normal shopping distance. Manufacturers can reformulate the entire product while keeping the visual identity of the brand intact. Same packaging, same colors, same front-of-pack language about real dairy and fresh milk, completely different internal formulation. That distinction is not an accident. It is a deliberate strategy, and it is the reason reading the back of the tub rather than the front is the only reliable way to understand what you are buying. Starting with Arla cream cheese spread. Arla is one of the largest dairy cooperatives in the world, operating across dozens of countries with a supply chain of enormous scale and complexity. At that scale, consistency is the overriding operational priority. Every unit produced in every facility across every market needs to behave identically. Fermentation, which is the biological process at the heart of traditional cream cheese production, is inherently variable. Temperature, culture activity, and timing all affect the outcome. At industrial scale, that variability is a manufacturing problem. The solution is to engineer the variability out. Replace the fermentation-dependent texture with a stabilizer system that delivers the same result, regardless of biological variation. Add protein isolates to standardize the structure. Use hydrocolloids to guarantee the mouthfeel and spreadability that cultures would have provided if the process had been allowed to run its course naturally. The product is consistent, it ships reliably, and it performs the same way in every market. What has been optimized away in service of that consistency is the process that made cream cheese what it was. The ingredient list reflects that trade-off directly. For consumers who buy Arla on the assumption that a major dairy cooperative is producing dairy products in a straightforwardly dairy way, the gap between that assumption and the formulation is worth knowing about. Then there are the supermarket own brand cream cheese spreads. Most shoppers assume the own label cream cheese at their supermarket is produced by that supermarket or by a dedicated supplier making a product to that retailer's specification. In many cases, own brand dairy products are manufactured by large dairy cooperatives producing at scale for multiple retail clients simultaneously. The same facility, the same production line, and in many cases the same base formulation, serves several different brands with different labels. The formulation approach used in many own-brand cream cheese products involves rebuilding texture using whey protein concentrate and milk protein concentrate rather than starting with whole cream and allowing cultures to develop the structure naturally. These are technically dairy ingredients. They are derived from milk, but the process of isolating them, concentrating them, and using them to reconstruct a texture that whole cream would have provided if used directly is meaningfully different from traditional cream cheese production. The practical implication for the consumer is this: you are buying a product whose dairy content has been disassembled, processed into component parts, and reassembled into something that performs like cream cheese. It is technically dairy. It is not the same as starting with cream and letting biology do what it does. The price point reflects the cost saving that reassembly allows. What it does not reflect is the difference in process that price saving represents. The Waitrose own-brand cream cheese spread and similar premium supermarket own-label products deserve specific attention because they occupy a particular position in consumer expectations. Premium supermarket own-brand products are positioned to suggest that a higher standard applies. The store environment, the packaging quality, and the pricing all create an impression that the product has been sourced and formulated more carefully than a budget alternative. For a product like cream cheese, where the traditional process is genuinely simple and genuinely clean, that impression carries specific implications. Consumers paying more for a premium own-label dairy product are frequently doing so on the assumption that the formulation is closer to traditional rather than further from it. When the ingredient list of a premium supermarket own-label cream cheese spread includes gar gum, locust bean gum, or carrageenan alongside the dairy ingredients, the gap between the premium impression and the actual formulation becomes a consumer information issue. The stabilizer system present in many premium own-label products is not substantially different from what appears in budget alternatives. You are paying for the retail environment and the packaging quality. The ingredient list is doing something similar to what the budget products are doing. Then, there is the generic budget cream cheese spread available across discount retailers. This category is worth discussing because it represents the clearest and most honest version of the cost optimization logic running through the whole sector. Budget cream cheese spreads do not pretend to be artisan products. The pricing signals what they are, and the formulation reflects that signal accurately. Modified food starch, multiple stabilizers, elevated moisture content, reduced cream fraction. The formula tells you directly that cost reduction has been the priority in every ingredient decision. The point worth making about this category is not that it is uniquely deceptive. It is the opposite. The budget products are in some ways the most transparent version of what is happening across the category because the price at least corresponds to the formulation. The more concerning version of the same formula is the one sold at a premium in an environment designed to suggest the opposite. And the most important brand to discuss is Philadelphia Cream Cheese Spread. Philadelphia is not just a brand. It is the category in the minds of most British consumers. When the word cream cheese is spoken in a domestic context in this country, Philadelphia is the mental image that follows for a very large proportion of the population. That level of cultural embedding is built over generations and represents an enormous amount of trust. It is important to be precise here. The Philadelphia cream cheese block, the plain unspread variety, has a relatively clean formulation. That product is closer to the traditional process than many competitors and deserves to be recognized as such. Philadelphia cream cheese spread is a different product. The ingredient list includes carrageenan, gar gum, and xanthan gum. These three ingredients are doing the structural work that cream is supposed to do in a traditional formulation. They bind water. They create the smooth, spreadable texture. They hold the structure through distribution, temperature variation, and shelf life in a way that a higher cream fraction would do naturally if the product were made without them. The front of the Philadelphia spread packaging carries language about fresh milk and real cream. That language is technically accurate. Milk and cream are present in the formula. They are not present in the quantities and ratios that would make stabilizers unnecessary. The hydrocolloid system is there because the dairy fraction alone, at the concentration used, cannot deliver the texture and stability that the product is sold on. The stabilizers are filling the gap that a more generous cream fraction would have filled if a different commercial decision had been made. Philadelphia built its reputation on a product. The spread carries that reputation forward on the basis of brand recognition built by a formulation that the spread does not replicate. That gap between the heritage trust and the current formulation is the most significant example in this category, precisely because Philadelphia's cultural position means more people are affected by it than any other single brand. 3 tests you can run at home to understand what is in your cream cheese before you read the label. The first is the heat test. Take a small spoonful of your cream cheese and place it in a pan over low heat. Do not stir it. Do not touch it. Simply let it sit and observe. Traditional cream cheese made with a high cream fraction will break down slowly and smoothly. The fat separates gently from the water, the texture becomes glossy, and the whole thing liquefies in a predictable and natural way. A heavily stabilized product behaves differently. It goes sticky, it clumps, it resists the heat in a way that feels almost rubbery, because the hydrocolloid system was engineered specifically to maintain structure under exactly this kind of stress. Those gums were designed to hold their shape. Under low heat, instead of melting cleanly, they hold on. Once you have seen that happen, you understand what is actually doing the structural work in the container. The second is the cold spread test. Take your cream cheese directly from the refrigerator and try to spread it without waiting for it to come to room temperature. Traditional cream cheese resists slightly when cold. It feels dense. You need to work with it a little. That resistance is fat behaving as fat does at low temperature. A stabilized product spreads more easily, almost immediately, with a quality that can feel almost whipped or aerated, because in many cases it has effectively been diluted with water that the hydrocolloid system is holding in suspension. The third test is the simplest. Count the ingredients. Traditional cream cheese needs 4. Milk, cream, cultures, salt. If the label has more than 5 ingredients, and particularly if you can see multiple gums listed, you are holding a stabilized dairy system rather than cream cheese in the original sense of the term. Now for the products worth buying. Vermont Creamery cream cheese is at the premium end of the market and earns that position honestly. Small batch production, traditional fermentation, high butterfat content, an ingredient list that contains nothing that needs explaining. This is the product chefs reach for when texture and flavor matter to the outcome of a dish, rather than simply to the spread on a bagel. The quality difference is perceptible, and it reflects a genuine commitment to process over shortcuts. Available through specialist retailers and online in the UK, Green Valley Creamery lactose-free cream cheese solved a real accessibility problem without compromising the formula. Most lactose-free dairy products achieve their modified formulation by adding ingredients or reformulating around the problem. Green Valley uses enzymes to break down the lactose while leaving the cream cheese structure completely intact. The quality of the original product is preserved. The accessibility is expanded. That is food science working with the dairy rather than replacing it. The ingredient list is clean. The process is honest. Colonna and small batch cream cheese represents what cream cheese looks like before industrial optimization becomes involved. Grass-fed milk, minimal processing, no stabilizers, no protein isolates, no hydrocolloid systems engineering water into the appearance of cream. This is the reference point for what the product is supposed to be at its baseline. Available through specialist cheese retailers and farmers market suppliers across the UK. NYF Probiotic Foods cream cheese makes fermentation the center of its identity, not as a marketing angle, but as a literal production method. Instead of using stabilizers to create thickness, live cultures are allowed to do the work over time. The result is natural thickness, a slight, authentic tanginess, and a texture that comes from biology rather than chemistry. This is closer to how cream cheese was originally developed before someone calculated that gum systems were cheaper than patience. The best widely available cream cheese in Britain is Organic Valley. This is the one that surprised me most in researching this video, because it is not a niche product available only through specialist retailers at prices that limit its accessibility. Organic Valley is a farmer-owned cooperative producing at meaningful scale and selling through mainstream grocery channels at a price point that is higher than budget alternatives, but not prohibitively so. The ingredient list reads as follows. Organic milk, cream, salt, cultures. That is the complete list. No gums, no stabilizers, no modified starches, no protein concentrates, nothing that requires explanation or that signals a process working around a dairy shortfall. The cooperative ownership structure is relevant to understanding why this list looks the way it does. In a farmer-owned cooperative, the farmers are the stakeholders. The incentive to reduce the cream fraction and replace it with a stabilizer system is structurally weaker than in a corporate model where the primary obligation is to shareholder return. When the people producing the dairy are also the people with a stake in the final product, the motivation to simulate cream rather than use it is fundamentally different. Organic Valley is real cream cheese at accessible scale and accessible price. It exists. It is available. And most people walk past it because Philadelphia is at eye level and has been there their entire lives. The brands on the avoid list are not breaking regulations. They are not doing anything that food law prohibits. They have identified every legal flexibility in the labeling system and used it efficiently, consistently, and at enormous scale. That is what optimized food production looks like from inside the manufacturing model. But optimization for cost is not the same as quality. And consistency delivered by a stabilizer system is not the same as the consistency that comes from a well-executed traditional process. The brands on the worth buying list made a different choice. They chose to let dairy do what dairy does rather than engineer a cheaper version of the result and call it the same thing. The difference between those two approaches is what you are tasting when one cream cheese feels right and another feels slightly wrong in a way you cannot quite name. You were not imagining it. The ingredient list on the back of the tub is the explanation. The front of the package tells you what the brand wants you to believe. The ingredient list tells you what you are actually buying. 4 ingredients or fewer, and you are holding the real thing. A list that extends to gums, stabilizers, and protein concentrates, and you are holding something else in the same packaging. Costa Brace to TruthCart UK for more honest product analysis. No affiliate arrangements, no sponsored conclusions, just the label reading that most brands are counting on you not doing.